On the night of January 14, 2025, at 11 p.m., a 68-year-old woman was preparing to retire to bed. This was Nancy Wamboi in her home. Just as she reached her bed switch to turn off the lights, her phone rang. This was an unexpected call from her daughter, Lucy Wamaitha. Aged only 32, Lucy worked for a local NGO. On the other end of the call, Lucy's voice was trembling and haunted by fear. She said, "Mom, I love you. Please pray for me. I'm currently on my final assignment and I feel like someone is planning to set me up. Someone wants me dead. Please pray for me, Mom." These were the last words that Nancy ever heard from her beloved daughter. Words that would become a tragic foreshadow, tinged with dread. Lucy spoke of an impending assignment she hoped would conclude her NGO work and bring her back home safely. Yet in her voice lingered something darker. A sense of urgency, a plea for protection, and a mother's instinct to raise an alarm. That night, the fleeting shadows cast by the light in her mother's bedroom held a stillness that would never again show. Within 48 hours, in January 17, 2025, Lucy Wamaitha would vanish and be reported missing. This is not just the story of a missing woman, it's a descent into betrayal, brutality, and the haunting silence left behind. Hello and welcome to Dark Hour Docs, where we uncover the darkest crimes, the unanswered questions, and the voices crying out for justice. Tonight, we delve into what really happened to Lucy Wamaitha and explain the occurrences leading up to this terrifying call.
The family of Lucy Wamaitha
and bring to book suspects in the murder of Lucy Wamaitha.
On a work trip with her boss is appealing to on
Lucy Wamaitha was more than an NGO staffer. She was a fiercely dedicated soul, driven by compassion. Lucy was born and raised in Makoyo, Murang'a County. She grew up in a humble home where community and service were not just ideals, but everyday practice. Those who knew her remembered Lucy for her unwavering commitment to helping others. She was also so generous towards the vulnerable. By 2025, at the age of 32, Lucy was serving as a secretary and accounting officer. This was with a Kiambu-based NGO named Rehema Rescue CBO. The NGO was based at Kiandutu slums. Its mission was rescuing and rehabilitating vulnerable and less privileged children. She was known in professional circles as conscientious and ethical, someone who didn't shy away from hard truths or hard work. Her superiors and peers regarded her as the organizational backbone. She was a meticulous record keeper, tireless advocate, and a guardian of donor accountability. Those around her sensed she carried not just responsibility, but a deep protective instinct towards the children she served. And for the donors, their contributions made her work possible. Lucy paid attention and was unwilling to compromise her integrity, no matter what, even when it meant speaking against higher-ups. In her personal life, Lucy cherished time with her mother and her friends. Even among friends, she was discreet but warm. Yet beneath that warm smile lay a layer of vigilance and an instinct that would one day send her reaching for her phone in fear. But that vigilance couldn't shield her connections from danger. Lucy was entering a pivotal moment in her career, what she believed to be a final assignment. Though something darker was stirring under the surface, a hidden threat rooted in power and trust, which would shatter her plans and plunge her mission into tragedy. And so the story crescendos towards what would come next. Within just few days, that final assignment would evolve from hopeful culmination to abrupt vanishing. And everything changed. January 16, 2025 dawned with hopeful anticipation. Lucy was scheduled to complete what she had called her final assignment. She left her home at Kiandutu in Kisii Estate in Thika, bidding goodbye to her neighbor and confidant. This was Eunice, a friend who even had a spare key to her house. She was dressed in grey jeans, grey hood, and black Vans. Waiting a few meters down the road was Stanley Ng'ang'a Njuguna. Stanley was her boss and the director of the NGO tasked with rescuing and rehabilitating vulnerable children. Lucy climbed into his car, ready to begin the day's work. Their mission that day was to transport a child to a school in Embu County under their NGO care. According to Stanley, the morning proceeded as planned until midday, when they stopped for lunch in Embu town. It was the last place Lucy was seen alive before vanishing into silence. That same evening on January 16th, Eunice tried calling Lucy, but her phone was unreachable. By January 17, concern escalated. Calls remained unanswered as Lucy had not returned home. Panic seeped into Lucy's mother, Nancy Wamboi, when she too couldn't reach her daughter. On January 18, Nancy Wamboi rushed to Lucy's house. She entered the house using the spare key of Eunice, only to find the house empty. Her daughter had vanished with no visible sign of struggle, no note, and only an eerie absence. By January 20, having endured days of silence, Nancy and Eunice reported Lucy missing at the Thika West police station. Investigations began swiftly. The police took statements, and the only clear lead pointed to the man who was last seen with her, Stanley Ng'ang'a. Curiously and ominously, both Lucy and Stanley's phones went off exactly at 1 p.m. on that day she disappeared. However, Stanley's phone resumed operations the next morning, but Lucy never turned hers on again. That synchrony and a glimmer of collusion would become a crucial thread in the unraveling mystery. Police would later question Stanley Ng'ang'a. He recounted that after lunch in Embu, Lucy requested to be dropped off somewhere. Lucy requested to be dropped off at the outskirts of Thika town. Here, he said, a small white car was waiting. He said he left her there and drove off. It was the last time anyone claimed to see her alive. But as investigators dug deeper, the story began to fracture. First, the uncanny coincidence of simultaneous phone shutdowns. Lucy's and Stanley's phones went off at 1 p.m. and only Stanley's was turned back on the following morning. Lucy's phone went dark forever, no further contact, no trace, no farewell. Second, the white car Stanley mentioned could not be traced. Was it real or a convenient distraction? Investigators quietly began to suspect premeditation. Lucy had been outspoken and had reportedly accused Stanley of misusing donor funds. This was money intended for the education of needy children. Colleagues hinted at rising tensions between them as she was principled and Stanley may have felt exposed. Stanley was detained and released on bond pending further investigation. The DCI took over the case. Every day Lucy remained missing deepened the dread. Yet little did they know the darkness beneath the surface would soon surface in the most harrowing way imaginable.
The parts that were found in Sagana River were confirmed indeed to be those of Wamaitha. A DNA sample.
On January 22, 2025, police in Embu County made a gut-wrenching discovery. They found a mutilated torso stuffed inside a gunny bag and dumped in River Sagana. The remains were grotesquely mutilated, partially burned, limbs severed, and head missing. The body had been dosed with corrosive chemicals, a deliberate act to obliterate identification. When investigators presented the remains to Nancy, the emotional toll was immense. Yet amid the horror, she recognized Lucy's trademark presence. This was her brown and blue dreadlocks, still visible even among the maimed torso. So DNA tests were rapidly prioritized. Collected from Nancy on February 12, samples were matched against the remains. On March 24, confirmation came. The body parts belonged to Lucy Wamaitha, the missing NGO worker. The confirmation sent shockwaves through the community. Questions multiplied. Who did this? How could someone betray trust so brutally? Meanwhile, the search continued. Lucy's remains were not whole. Only a torso from waist to neck was recovered. Other parts were all missing and possibly destroyed or dumped elsewhere. In March 2025, detectives recovered additional parts floating in River Tana. This was further evidence that systematic dismemberment and disposal was at play. The murder was not random. It was premeditated, surgical, and meant to dehumanize. Stanley Ng'ang'a, already under arrest from earlier and released, was now rearrested. He was formally charged with murder. The DCI Homicide Unit intensified investigations, focusing on uncovering whether he had acted alone, and if so, why he targeted Lucy so viciously. In the aftermath, Nancy faced unfathomable grief. Her daughter, once the family pillar, who bought her mother's medicine and at times paid the bills, was no more. When burial arrangements began, Nancy made a painful decision that there would be nobody viewing. She would bury only what remained and place Lucy's photograph atop the casket. Despite the agony, she saw it as a step towards closure. On April 17, the burial took place at Makoyo Ward, Murang'a County. The grieving family, friends, and neighbors gathered, mourning not just her death, but its grotesque nature and lingering questions. While final rites were performed, Nancy's heart ached with one hope, a hope for justice. She spoke emotionally of her daughter's last life plea and the betrayal by someone she trusted. On the other hand, as Stanley Ng'ang'a awaited trial, public outrage intensified. Political leaders, clergy, and ordinary citizens demanded swift justice. The case became emblematic of two systematic scourges: the issue of gender-based violence and betrayal by trusted figures. The DCI continued the investigations with the aim to look for the missing body parts, examine timelines, interview associates, and piece together the days leading up to Lucy's disappearance. They explored whether Stanley had accomplices or had acted alone. Each revelation fueled national discourse on safety, power, and impunity. To this day, the full motive remains clouded. Was it a retaliation for Lucy blowing the whistle on donor fund misuse? Was it a twisted reaction to rejection of advances? Or did emotions override reason? Only the murderer and whatever accomplices may exist know the full crime. Lucy Wamaitha's case is more than a criminal proceeding, it's a grim parable. Her last words that someone wanted her dead echo as both forewarning and tragedy. Her death reminds us of the darkness that can lurk within places of trust. Darkness in the workplace, where mentorship can mask manipulation within affection. A place where respect can become control. Lucy trusted a leader, spoke out against his actions, and that courage seemed to cost her life. But her story is not in vain. It has spotlighted the urgent need for stronger protections for whistleblowers, for women in leadership, and for anyone raising uncomfortable truths. It has made Kenyans question safety nets, accountability, and what truly stands between trust and violence. Lucy's voice may be silenced, but her plea lives on. For her and for others, justice must rise from tragedy. This is Dark Our Dogs, and if you found this story compelling, hit that like and subscribe button.